Thank you.
Awesome.
I told Mike, I said, I will probably forget to start. There you go. I forgot. Thank you.
No, this will be great. Thanks.
Okay. So, first thing I wanted to share was actually, this is just a thought from my son's mission president that he just got back from his mission in the Philippines. And this idea of there is no growth in the comfort zone and there's no comfort in the growth zone. This is a very uncomfortable time, I think, for pretty much all of us. And that is not all bad. When we are comfortable, we tend not to reflect as much. We tend not to learn as much. This is a great time for all of us to learn about ourselves and to learn about our relationship with the Savior and to think about what's really important. And that will really help you personally and professionally if you can keep that in mind and stay grounded in just the fundamental truths of your life, even if your career is not going quite the way that you had expected. Next thought I wanted to share, then this painting is actually from, it's about the members of the William Martin Handcart Company. So some of you might be aware, Jens Nielsen, who was a member of that company, lost two of his children trying to cross Rocky Ridge in Wyoming in 1856. And he himself felt he was going to die, and he kind of laid down by the side of the trail and just told his wife to go on. He couldn't make it. And she said, no, you have carried us this far. I will now carry you. And she pulled him. He was about 6'4", about 260 pounds. She was about 5 foot even, about 100 pounds. And she pulled him throughout the night through about 12 miles of a snowstorm. And he survived. They both survived. And he had a quote afterwards reflecting on that situation, which was, sometimes we must go forward even if we can't. And I love that thought because, of all the life on this planet, we are the only ones who can reconceptualize what is possible. What I mean by that is I have a dog, and if the dog decides something is not crossable or invisible fence or whatever, that's it. That's it. It's a given, can't be done. We actually have the ability as imaginative people, as people who have the spirit, to reconceptualize what is possible. We can go forward even if we can't. And we all have a long legacy in our lives of doing that ourselves. And we all have family and others, mentors who have shown us that we in fact can do that. So this is, and again, I presented this to all the students, regardless of their school or religious affiliation. This is my favorite quote from Russell M. Nelson. Happiness has little to do with the circumstances of our lives and everything to do with the focus of our lives. There are challenges when you start to think, I have to have this job to be happy. And I know a lot of people do that. I have done that at times. A lot of people in school think that. There are two problems with that. One is that you are trying to dictate the circumstances under which you will be happy, and those are not within your control. You cannot control whether you get into X job or whether you have this kind of level of responsibility. So one, you would be predicating your happiness on things you can't control. And then second, what if you do get to that preconceived job, the job you thought you had to have, the internship you thought you had to have, and then it's not fulfilling? So that means you can't be happy because you had already defined that as what you needed to be happy. So I think that's what President Nelson means when he says it's ultimately the focus of our lives, professionally and personally. Of course, we all have personal ties that are going to keep us happy. And then professionally, I think it has more to do with deciding what you like to do, what you're good at, and then doing it wherever you have the chance. One of my favorite quotes from John Stockton, who some of the old schoolers on the call will remember was a fantastic point guard for the Utah Jazz. He said he would play basketball whenever and wherever he could, and he would love doing it. Whether it's a YMCA or whether it's, the NBA All-Star game, he was just happy doing what he loved. And that didn't mean that he had to do it in a particular venue. It was because he knew what he was good at, and he knew doing that gave him a lot of fulfillment. So that's some thoughts there. And then the final thought I have in terms of just general principles is this from Tom Brady. Some of you remember the Super Bowl a couple of years ago when with 2 minutes left in the third quarter, Atlanta was really beating up on them 28-3. And he said he heard this quote somewhere else, but he said, "I haven't come this far just to come this far." You all have a journey in your careers and in your school. You all were thrilled to be at BYU, to be in the graduate program there. And you have been led every step of the way, and you haven't come this far just to come this far. Life will not end for you, your career will not end for you next week or next month. It's a long journey. And if you're too prescriptive about the way it needs to be, you're actually cutting yourself off from opportunity. So things will go on, things will get better, doors will open, some doors will shut, but that will just allow other opportunities to come up. And I just want us all to keep that in mind. Okay, so now to shop talk. And I have a few thoughts, and then Todd and Scott are going to join in. So this is networking. And honestly, I presented this to these other MBAs, but where it really came from was preach my gospel, right? It's like, this is how you view missionary work. And it is absolutely how you should be viewing networking to find a job. So just think of 3 pools. You have cool relationships, people you don't know very well, if at all, you just kind of have an email or something. You have a personal relationships with people, and they're going to warm up to you. And then you have advocates. Those are the people who will help you find a job. I think the path here is to read any given contact and assess which pool they belong to, then try and move them from one pool to the next. It's important that you have patience and you don't try to force things. Some contacts may not pay off immediately, and that is just fine. Just because someone doesn't know you doesn't mean you can be frustrated with them because they aren't warm or really trying to help you get a job. What you need to do is build connections with that person with whom you have a cool relationship and help warm them up. Another thing, and again, this is straight from missionary work, don't prejudge. Don't prejudge who might be willing to help you. I was in a situation a few years ago where I was considering making a move in my own career, and I had a former supervisor who I really wasn't sure how he felt about me. He was always fine and he gave me decent reviews, but I wasn't sure if he was a Tom fan or not. And I made an appointment to go talk to him in his office, and we talked about this and that. And then finally, I brought up the fact that I really was interested in the company where he was working, and I would love it if he could help introduce some people. And he was immediately a great advocate for me. He called in the head of HR right at that moment to meet me, which was something I did not anticipate. And so there may be people who you say, I'm not sure if I should reach out to them. Don't prejudge. You don't know. At worst, you're going to have kind of a reintroduction, and they might be a little bit cool at first, but don't prejudge. There are people who are natural advocates. There are also people who can become advocates as you build a relationship with them. You should cast a wide net and don't be too narrow in terms of what success looks like. Often success will just be building a friendship, getting to know people that you didn't know before. Not everyone you talk to has to be immediately banging down your door trying to offer you a job. In fact, I think most of you know that's unlikely to happen. So assess your contacts, try and figure out where along the spectrum they are, and then be patient. Because when you're trying to find a job, connections almost always trump resumes in my experience. Just like looking online, throwing resumes at like the 3 jobs that might be posted right now in particular, is not going to be a productive use of your time. What you want to do is get on the radar for posted and confidential opportunities. Most of the jobs you see posted, they probably have people in some pool of candidates that they're thinking about. So you want to think 2 steps ahead, think how do you get on the radar for companies you're interested in so that when jobs come up, they already know you. So again, this is not like I need a job tomorrow. Often this is a long game, particularly in an economy like this. And so, really be patient, cast a wide net, don't prejudge, have patience, don't try and force a relationship, just ease people along. And this should be a pattern that, as I said, that's really quite familiar to you. Okay, so Scott, do you want to take this slide?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Tom. Hey, everyone. It's good. I wish I could be with you in person, but thanks so much for having us. I just wanted to give, before I dive into the unwritten rules, a couple thoughts came to mind, which is you have to know where you are temporally as well in all this. If you're in a situation where you're like, I need money coming in the bank next month, or I'm going to get into a deep temporal hole, that's a good thing to know, because that might change some of what you do. You might need to put some other things in order to figure out how do I make sure that I'm okay financially, personally, and still able to be self-reliant. And then I can focus on some of these what are admittedly longer term career kind of things that we're talking about. So definitely just assess your situation, know what's possible, have in your mind, I am going to need income by this point. And here are some of my backup plans if some of these longer term things don't come, because that can give you a little bit of comfort and confidence to let some of these things play out over a little bit of a longer time horizon. Anyway, that was just something that was top of mind, because everyone's coming from a different situation and place. I've been at points where I'm like, I need a paycheck pretty much next week. And I've been at points where I'm like, no, I could actually trim some expenses, hold on and be okay for 3, 6 months, 12 months, depending on what situation is. Everyone's in a different situation. Just know what yours is and have kind of a backup plan. Okay, so networking unwritten rules that are written. So first, some of these will feel, there may be a little bit of overlap, but hopefully the reinforcement's useful. The two-way benefit, Tom's always been such a good advocate of this, is you actually bring things to the table. When I talk to you, when I come out for the marketing advisory board, here are the things that I get from you all. I get a perspective on, number one, how people are, your consumers. I'm a consumer marketer. I get a perspective on how young adults are using and consuming media, what kind of products and categories they're interested in, how they're using different, service and product categories. I get like useful professional value just talking to you and learning and listening to you, because I'm unfortunately no longer in your demographic. So I need to understand, but I care deeply about you professionally because I go to you. You also bring value as you're part of the workforce that these people, myself and others, work with. And so we're trying to understand what you value, what fulfills you in jobs, what your work styles are like, what experiences you have or don't have. So that's value. That's something valuable you bring to someone who's more experienced in their career. And also bring your own unique set of experiences and personalities. And, good leaders love relationships, and they find value in just getting to know people. And they also find value in feeling like they can make a difference. So know that you bring value to the relationship, and just think about what that might be, and you can bring that across. Second one is do your homework. So, before you go in, don't overschedule yourself so much that you go in just with super generic questions or a super generic understanding of who this person is. As in, like, this is leader of big company, and my question is, what job like? Go a level deeper. If you've decided that you're interested, this gets with my next point. If you're curious about this particular sector or industry, go in with some questions that you have, some hypotheses that you've formed. Gosh, this COVID-19 environment plus a recession must be having an interesting impact on you, person in the travel industry, because now not only do you have people with less money to spend in the travel industry, but now you have people who are afraid about being in groups or afraid about traveling in mass transit, or so have interesting questions, things that have been sparked by your curiosity, things that show that you're aware of what they do and you're engaged in it. That comes across so well. I really think I remember the conversations by people who come in with unexpected questions, who people have come in with, whether their hypotheses are crazy or amazing, they've come in having thought about it and had some thoughts that they want to engage me on. That always makes those more memorable. The fourth one is showcasing your strengths. So really knowing how you tell your story. we talk about this when we come out for the advisory board. We talk about understanding your brand and your story. You should be able to, in what we, we call the elevator pitch like way, you need to be able to say in a few sentences where you are in your career and what you're trying to get to next. Are you a career switcher? Are you someone who, gosh, I've had a lot of experience in professional services and I'm ready to get into more of a manufacturing side experience? Are you someone who comes from some entrepreneurial experiences, but you're looking for the strength and training quality of a larger organization? Are you going the opposite way? Someone who's only been a part of big organizations but wants the kind of entrepreneurial environment of a smaller, medium-sized company? You're someone that came from marketing, marketing research and now wants to get into more brand strategy. Know what your story is and where you and where you're trying to go and where you've come from. And that will also let people know what your strengths are and what your fit might be with them. Next one is leave an impression. And this one I know this is super basic, but it can't be said enough. People remember experiences where they found someone to be likable. They found them to be intelligent, confident, meaning like this is someone that could come into my organization and hold their own, and then ambitious. And that sometimes to a BYU group, ambitious can sometimes sound like a scary word, like maybe it's an evil word, but let me define ambition. Ambition meaning I have goals, I'm achievement oriented, and I feel a sense of urgency, and I use my confidence to achieve those goals. So this isn't about being arrogant, it's not about being egotistical, but it's about having a goal orientation and having the confidence and skill to achieve those goals. So those are the kind of things you can control. You can't control, that person's personal preferences. You can't control what company or industry they're in, but you can control the impression that you give. And then last thing, and this goes back to something Tom just said, which is have a broad definition of success. This is something that, we talk about, in our missionary program a lot, which is success is not necessarily someone stepping into the waters of baptism and being converted in that sense. Success is giving someone an opportunity to learn. And in the case of networking, success is a memorable connection. The chance that that person's going to remember you favorably, whether it translates into something now, the next 30 to 60 days, or the next 10 to 30 years. The most important thing and the broadest definition of success in networking is that you had a memorable connection and that you feel like you both added value to each other's lives in some small way. So those are just a few of my thoughts. And then the last thing I'd say, and then I'll hand it over, I think I'm going to hand to Todd next, is, I'm in the food industry right now, and I'm going to go up to that be curious part. I mean, it is fascinating right now how people are reacting with food. And you'd probably guess what a lot of the things are, but all of a sudden, in the month of March, we saw I work in granola bars right now. I'm saving the world one whole grain granola bar at a time with Nature Valley. And we saw about 200 million more granola bars of all brands go into homes in the month of March than were in homes last year. So people bought 200 million more granola bars in that month. And a lot of them came through, Costco and Sam's Club and big bulk packs. And so now in April, people aren't buying very many granola bars because they had 200 million more of them in their houses in March. And so we've got to be full of curiosity now. I'm the category leader, and I've got to tell my customers and my internal executive what in the world is happening in this category of snack bars. It was flying high one month, and now it's like scraping the bottom of the barrel. And it's different if you work in, cake mixes, where all of a sudden cake mixes are having like 100-year level growth that they haven't seen because everyone decides that now they're Betty Crocker because they're home and that's the only thing they can do. So anyways, there's just fun curiosity things you could take to any industry right now. Tech, travel, entertainment, marketing research, any industry that you can think of. You could have some really interesting hypotheses or curiosity-based questions of what's happening and what's going to happen in the next 12 to 18 months. So you've got baked in interesting things to talk about with almost anybody. All right, I'm going to pause there and hand off. And I think someone asked a question about the slides. We will make sure that we get the slides available to you after the call.
Yeah, and this is being recorded as well, just so everybody knows. Okay, Todd.
All right, hopefully you guys can hear me okay. Thank you for the opportunity for Tom and Scott and I to meet with you. We've been thinking about you and concerned about you. And so I want to chat briefly in terms of, okay, if you are in with the majority of many people who have had internship offer that is no longer there, I want to chat with you about what do we do now. So 5 things I'll take you through briefly here. The first and most important one is don't take it personally. Really is not you. In some cases, when you're interviewing for something and you don't get that role, it may be you, but in this case, I can tell you most definitively it is not. Did you know about 63% of all Fortune 500 companies now have pulled internships? And so you are one of the majority here in this case, and it's very unfortunate. But let me actually take you through from a guy who usually has 5 to 6 BYU interns in my organization each summer, why that is. And that really the rationale for why is it that internships have been pulled or have been shortened. And that is really in terms of we have a hard time thinking through how can we onboard and ramp somebody up where they don't know the company, don't have access to corporate systems or access to other team members to really help them. There's just a limited amount of projects that you could work on this way. And we want to make sure that the internship experience is a really good one for you. It's not a question of resources. It's more a question of how do we make sure that we can get interns onboarded, ramped up, and fully capable of delivering a meaningful project in 10 to 12 weeks. As we've talked before about this, an internship is one where with only 10 to 12 weeks, it is a sprint, even in the best of times, to be able to get up and running, moving, and then delivering on a meaningful project by the end of 10 to 12 weeks. Now, when it's not the best of times, even more challenging. So that's more the rationale as far as why companies and business unit leaders are pulling some of those internships. So I do hope you see it's less about resources, less about the individuals, less about you, more in terms of how do we make sure that it's a meaningful internship experience. So the question is, what do you do next? And if there's only one thing that you take from my speaking to you, it is to break the paradigm of a traditional internship. Here's what I mean by that. I would like to challenge you that you can still get the type of job experience you want this summer, even though it may not be working in a traditional internship. Let me actually tell you about the story of Abe Wilson. Abe Wilson was a BYU student who was really interested in working at Google. He contacted me and he said, hey, I am a piano performing arts major and I'm really interested in Google. I didn't see the tie-in between piano and Google that much, so I said, okay, I appreciate the interest. First of all, we need to make sure that you get some Google do you have any marketing experience? Well, no, I don't. Do you have any experience with Google? Well, I use the search engine. It's like, great. Let's see how I can expound on that even further here. I said, what would be great to do is become familiar and even certified with some Google products. Did you know that there's an online course you can take that's free to become Google AdWords certified? So take the class, get certified. And so he did that during his spring semester and he got certified. He came back to me and said, great, I'm certified. Now what? What he then did is actually, I said, I'd like to see if you can get some actual work experience. He said, well, I can't work for an ad agency. I don't come from that background. And I said, fine, identify some student organizations, identify a nonprofit, a startup, something that you can work for free just to get the experience. What you really want is to get the experience and build credibility based upon that. Add 1 or 2 bullet points in your resume by virtue of doing this. He then went and found 2 or 3 student organizations. He worked with I think it was a nursing home as well on some things who were able to do that, got the experience, was able to get an interview with the hiring manager in my organization, got the job offer to be an intern, then while an intern there, really tried to network while he was there, got a full-time job after that at Google. But the interesting thing is he had 0 experience. If you think about it, he had nothing that really would make him very marketable. but what helped him is challenging the traditional internship profile as far as, well, here's my resume, I'm going to apply and see what I get. I'd like to ask each of you to think through, what is that, if there is 2 or 3 things as far as actual professional experience that you'd like to get this summer, list them out. What are they? Once you know what are those 1 or 2 things, what are those types of projects that you could work on your own, or with a nonprofit or a student organization, to actually get that experience? In essence, hire yourself. If employees are having a hard time hiring during COVID, that's fine. Hire yourself. Build your own type of work base, even if it's free, to get the experience. Scott talked about temporal needs, and I think that's really important. If you have those sufficient temporal needs matched or taken care of, you still can get that work experience. And if there's one thing that you remember from this, it's that even with COVID, you can get work experience in a non-standard internship type of experience that way. 3 other things just to briefly take you through, and that is also expand your reach. Most of you have LinkedIn profiles. If you don't, get it. And for, I would say, 100% of those of you who do have a LinkedIn profile, there are always things that you can do to improve that. The job that I have now, quite honestly, came from having a LinkedIn profile, where Google reached out to me about 10 years ago saying, hey, we're interested in chatting with you. You will be found much more via LinkedIn than any other online source. So look for 1 or 2, if you do have a LinkedIn profile, great. Identify 1 or 2 things that you can do to improve your ability to be found. Your challenge is really being found even more here. So either not only for those with looking for work for the summer, but for those BYU alumni on this call, look for 1 or 2 things to improve that LinkedIn profile. If you don't know what that is, literally go onto linkedin.com or Google improving LinkedIn profile, and you'll be able to find a few things. In addition to this, that's one where it's more of a shotgun approach, just looking to see how broad you can have that coverage from LinkedIn itself, and hoping that it's more reactive. You're waiting for people to contact you, and that's fine. I'd also like to suggest some things where it's not the shotgun approach, it's much more a rifle-focused approach. Identify who are your top 10 companies that you would most like to work with. And then based upon that, identify BYU alumni. You can do from either 1 or 2 sources. One is literally is type in that company and BYU, and you actually find a list of people who went there. A second one is you can leverage the BYU alumni database by company. I'm not sure, Mike, if we have that in the Marriott school, but I know that there are different ways of other sources to be able to do that. But I would say you'll have 95% plus hit rate of reaching out to a BYU alumni at that company and saying, hey, I am person XYZ. I also go to BYU or went to BYU. You have something in common with them. And I'd say that 95% of the time, they will respond to you and be willing to take some time with you. So whether it's for an internship, or summer project, or full-time work, leverage that BYU alumni. That's one of the best things that you have. 4th thing that I would talk about is in terms of invest in yourself. We find that many people who I work with, their customers are now just focused on financially surviving, making it through COVID. And as a result of that, they have a bit more time available. I would say make sure that you don't spend your time, invest your time. One of the best returns on investment is investing in yourself. You can take that class that you always wanted to, either for professional reasons or just personal interest, take it. Or if there's a book that you've really wanted to read that you haven't been able to, now's the perfect time. But utilize that free time wisely and use it to your advantage. The other one also I'd say is invest in others. It's an equally high return on investment. In some cases, it may be even more a higher return on investment that you get. Just to share with you, I was there was somebody who came to speak with some Google executives. He's the former U.S. Surgeon General who worked in the previous administration with Obama. He just came out with a book. His name is Vivek Murthy. The book is called Together. the healing power of human connection in a sometimes lonely world. And he talks about where working from home, or many of us, where our environment is now our living room, our bedroom, and bathroom, things like that. And so there's that aspect of loneliness there. One of the best ways of dealing with loneliness is service. Very much a gospel principle here of service, but identify ways where you can invest in others. It will guarantee to help them, but it also makes you happier, makes you, I think, more productive and more confident as well. So those are the things that I want to leave with you from this is even when you have an internship fall through, there are other things that you can do to get the work experience, to invest in yourself and serve others. So those are the things they want to take you through.
Great.
Tom, back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Todd. I appreciate both what you said, Todd, and also Scott as well. As Todd was talking, I was thinking of a student I had in the fall who she didn't do quite as well as she wanted to in the course, but we did have a bit of a connection. And she reached out to me about a month ago and asked if I would write a recommendation for her for an internship at Ogilvy, which I did. And then that internship was canceled. And so she didn't have that opportunity. But what she did is she said, you know, I really would be interested in doing a summer project with you in the beauty industry. And is there any way, do you know anyone who, you know, maybe we could work that out with, maybe a company, you know, or something. And at the time I thought no, and I just said, I'm not aware of something, I'll keep you in mind. And of course you hear that all the time. And then I was in a connection on something else with the chief marketing officer of a brand called Drunk Elephant. And that's like a unicorn brand right now in health and beauty. And she mentioned that they were looking to expand in India. And I thought that student is from India, and I know she was very connected to the beauty industry there. And so, you know, one thing led to another, and she now has a summer project at a unicorn beauty brand launching into her home country of India. So she just through a little, you know, networking, a little creativity, and also just letting me know that she really cared and that she was looking for options. Things have worked out for her, and she would not have predicted that 3 weeks ago. So anyway, I just really appreciate what Scott and Todd shared. I have some final thoughts, and we'll probably have, you know, maybe 15 minutes for questions. I just wanted to, some of these things we've said before, but I do want to say, I think casting a wide net, being audacious, and also flexible as to what your next opportunity could be, both of those are very important. I heard actually a friend who he works on Marcus at Goldman Sachs, which I know a lot of people in Utah know. He was sharing thoughts with the class that I teach, and he said two things. His two big pieces of advice was, one, don't be too prescriptive in terms of your career. You will end up just unnecessarily cutting yourself off from opportunities. And then second, he said, at any point in your career, spend an hour a week networking, no matter where you are, both internal and external. Always be reaching out to people. And I certainly, you know, those things are very important now, but it's just good advice for the future as well. Be persistent, be relentlessly persistent. The job market is a lot like the housing market. It can be unpredictable, capricious, full of rejection, but that doesn't mean you don't have a good house that you're trying to sell. It's just an alignment issue. Try to find the right alignment between buyer and seller, and ghosting will come with the territory. Rejection comes to the territory, but it's not, you know, as they say, it's not how often you fall down, it's how often you get up and be better. Take this as an opportunity to learn. I have learned a lot about industries and companies that I have never been hired for. In fact, because usually you're pushing yourself out of your comfort zone to prepare for those conversations, that knowledge is a gift, and you will take it with you into other opportunities. I had a friend at an award I was in Seattle who had a lot of really tragic things happen to him in his both personal and professional life. And his favorite saying was, you can become bitter or you can become better. You can use opportunities to improve, or you can let them weigh you down. And that really is up to you. You need to keep perspective and balance in your life. finally, and this echoes almost exactly what Todd said, as long as not being too prescriptive, you should invest in yourself and in your network every day. Take some time to learn, demonstrate insight, and show some courage as you do so. And then this is just one last thought, and then we'll get to Q&A. I just love this. I saw it on LinkedIn. It's a guy named Brian Acton, who was looking for a job, interviewed with Facebook. He posted this on Twitter. Facebook turned me down. It was a great opportunity to connect with some fantastic people. Looking forward to the next adventure. I love that attitude after a rejection, because it always feels like you got punched in the gut. And he's saying, hey, great opportunity to connect. Look forward to the next thing. Got denied by Twitter. That's okay. Might have been a long commute, looking for silver lining. So he was rejected by both Twitter and Facebook in 2009. In 2014, just 5 years later, he sold his company WhatsApp to Facebook for $21 billion. Winning is all about maintaining a positive attitude, especially during difficult times. Be strong. We know you can do it. I know I speak for myself as well as the entire marketing board when I say we love BYU and we know how capable and great you are. So with that, if you want to just ask questions by raise of hand, we are happy to have any open discussion you want to have for the next 15 minutes or so.
I have a question. You can't really see my hand, but for most of us, this is our first life-changing, world-changing event that we're adults for. Considering that we were babies when like 9/11 happened and the stock market crash. My question is, I guess, to all three of you guys, what have you learned from those events that you are using now and will use for future world-changing catastrophes, events?
That's an awesome question. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I'll just take a quick cut at that. And that was actually, it was in a sacrament meeting a month or so ago. Actually, it wasn't a month ago because it wasn't a sacrament meeting then. Anyway, a few months back in the days when we had sacrament meetings, somebody said the quote, that adversity strips you down to kind of your bare essentials. And I think that's really true. Like, you get to know who you are and you get to know what you're capable of as you go through tough times. Sort of all these illusions, all these things you kid yourself about, they all kind of get stripped away when things get tough. And that's fine for you to connect really with the core of who you are and what's most important to you, because those things will stay with you as things get better, as they inevitably will.
I can share a couple of things. So I got into the workforce. I graduated from BYU in April of '99 with an English major, and I continue to speak English to this day. And I remember I came out and I got a job at an IT consulting company. And I, again, was an English major, but somehow got a job because it was 1999. It was the tech boom. As long as you could turn on the computer, there were jobs in tech. And I got there and moved out to DC. It was so exciting. And all my starting class at the company, everyone was uber confident. People wanted to get their money in the stock market because it was just flying high. And I better get some money in the stock market too. And with the meager little bit of money that I had, I bought, I think it was like January of 2000. And Todd and Tom and Mike and others will know where I headed. I bought with my meager amount of extra money a few shares of AOL and Lucent technology. And I was like, I might as well retire now because these things are going to just double and triple like every few months. I just assumed that my experience, for the few months that I had been an adult was going to just replicate over and over. And then like April of 2000 happened and there was a crash and a lot of these tech stocks that had been overinflated all kind of, evaporated and my meager investment was no more. So that was one lesson, is that there are business cycles. And I learned that luckily with a small amount of money, but just know that there are business cycles and they're called cycles for a reason. And then I graduated my MBA program. I started MBA the day before 9/11. And then 9/11 happened and I had to get an internship in that environment. And the lesson I learned from that environment was what we've just gone through, the power of networking. I was a career switcher. I'd been a IT consultant with no desire to stay in IT or consulting, and I tried to make a move into brand management. And I had almost no chance. In fact, I couldn't get an interview in brand management, and the only one I got was because one of my study group mates had a father who was an HR executive at General Mills. And he just talked up General Mills and said, well, do you think I could just talk to your dad about it? I'd love to just get his advice. And so just through kind of dumb luck of being in a good study group with a friend, I was able to make that call, and we had a really great discussion. And at the end of my discussion, he said, and at the time I was getting pretty desperate. So I was like, well, what about HR? HR is wonderful, but it wasn't my plan. I was just like pivoting, kind of like, give me a job somewhere. He said, no, I think it sounds like brand is more what you want. And he's like, how about this? I'm going to just make sure that you get on the interview list, and the rest is up to you. Like, whether you sink or swim is kind of up to you, but I'll at least just get you on the list for an interview. And that is, for me was very fortunate, because that led to my internship, which has led to my full-time work that I've done at General Mills ever since. And so it was just a lesson of the power of that network, because just the normal resume route wasn't going to work. And then lastly, I was in the industry for about 6 or 7 years when we hit 2008 and hit the last recession. And I learned the lesson of counter-cyclical industries, meaning I was in food, which for a while seemed like, and most recently again, it seemed fairly unsexy to be in a big food company. I was like, yawn, wah, wah. And then I learned in 2008 that all of a sudden everyone was eating a lot more at home. And where other companies didn't have jobs, we had a lot of jobs and actually had more business. And so being counter-cyclical, by having a packaged food that could work during tough economic times is actually a good place to be. So it's just a few lessons I've learned from those three kind of periods that I've seen in my career.
I'll be brief because I want to make sure we also get some more questions we can answer here as well. So it's interesting. While I haven't been affected during some of these things like 9/11 or others, I have had experiences where I've been laid off. I've been laid off not just once, not just twice, but 3 different times in my career. And from that, I've learned a few things. One is, in some cases, things are going to happen completely outside of your control. Has nothing to do with you, but it really is just, one, there was a company we were being acquired by another one, and so they need to lay folks off. Another one is really poor quarterly earnings, and so let's lay off the folks who are most recently joined here at the company here. So it's learning that there's some accepting that things are sometimes outside of your control. Number 2, I guess, would be resilience of as Tom had said, it's how often do you get back up? But third, probably the most important one, is recognizing that my value, personal value, is not equated with where I work or functionally what I do. My value is much more in terms of hopefully how I serve and try and lift others, and then is not dictated by others or my employment status on things. So those are things that I've learned.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Todd.
I have another question.
Yeah.
So my question is regarding the don't self-prescribe your career kind of comment that was made by one of you. How did you, or how have you guys managed that balance between going for a dream job, but not self-prescribing or saying this is the only path, but also while staying motivated and driven to achieve that goal that you had previously set?
Good question. There are probably, the people that I've spoken with, there are only about 30% who have careers where it's more of that North Star type of thing to say, everything that I've done thus far really is leading to this job. Only, I'd say 70% is more of an evolving strategy over the course of time. And so if you've got that where it's that is that dream job, that very prescriptive thing, you may be lucky to say, well, here's the 3 or 4 stepping stones to get there. But in most cases, I think it was Sheryl Sandberg who said it's not as much a career ladder as it is a career lattice or a career jungle gym where you go from some things here this way to that way. I guess I would just simply say is, even if you say, here's my ultimate dream job, just recognize that there are many different ways to get there. And quite honestly, there may be some other dream jobs that you may find that as you go through the career that you're going to be even better than what you initially would have thought that way. So I guess the key point is just try and be open-minded and not too prescriptive in terms of what that is. Give yourself the opportunity to have, especially now, it's easier to have breadth of experience than depth, and that's actually going to help you longer term.
Yeah, the only thing, I think Todd's answer is perfect. The only thing I'd add is then to use that lattice. If you have a dream job, look for adjacent jobs near it, you know, because it may not be, like Todd said, it may not be 1, 2, 3 to get to the dream job, but just get near it. Learn something that would be valuable if you can eventually get that job. And if you don't have a dream job, look for jobs that open more doors than they shut. So go to companies or industries or positions that will make you an attractive candidate for next jobs, either because they carry some kind of, credential, or they just are going to give you some wonderful experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the thoughts I have is just two things. One is that we like to think of our lives as linear, but they aren't, right? Like as we look back, we like to think, oh, it was clearly A to B to C to D. But if you think back to when that actually happened, it often wasn't. You're sort of adjusting as you go, and that's a good thing. I have 2 close friends, both of whom are successful entrepreneurs that only started their company when they got laid off. And it's sort of like necessity was the mother of invention. They had to dig deep. They had to think, okay, well, what if a company's not going to give me the opportunity? How do I give me the opportunity? Kind of like what Todd said. And they both now are doing very well in their entrepreneurial environment. So sometimes you're looking to push yourself. Sometimes you get pushed, and that's all fine. As long it's how you respond. It's not what happens to you. Okay, we still have about 5 minutes if there are any other questions.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So in terms of connecting, kind of getting ourselves like in the door with potential companies that we might be interested in, what's a good way to just kind of get our foot in the door in terms of like a connection? Like if we were sending out a message on LinkedIn, what's a good way you would advise to just kind of pique an interest from a mentor or somebody in a company?
Yeah, I'll give it a shot, and then Scott or Todd want to jump in. I think look for a natural connection between you and that person. So that's why Todd said, look for BYU alumni, or look for people, maybe if you're an MBA, look for people who worked in a company you worked for beforehand. Things like that, where it's not just, hey, I'm a random person, but hey, here's a way in which we have a natural connection, and I'd love to talk to you more. So it's, think of that chart that I presented where you're kind of bringing people along the way. It gives you a nice rationale for starting the conversation. If you're saying, hey, we're already on this path, we have a bit of a connection or a bit of a relationship.
Yeah, I'd echo that.
Okay, good. Next question.
Hey, I don't have a question, but I do have a statement. I do all the alumni relations for the BYU MBA program. And a couple of years ago, I did a deep dive into our current MBA students to see how they'd gotten their internships, where our alumni were involved, how they'd gotten their job offers. And it turned out that when we ran the survey, it was about 90%. So 90% of our students got their internship or job opportunities by reaching out through LinkedIn and networking with our alumni. So our alumni love to help, but it does make sense what was said. When you reach out and you invite to connect, make a personal invitation, find points of contact, say, hey, I'm a MBA student, currently in the program. So there's, they teach you as missionaries to build on relationships of trust, have connection points there, and show genuine interest. And the chance of them accepting your offer is much higher. And then there are steps you can take to quickly move into a quid pro quo or a situation, after they've accepted your invitation, you can go on their LinkedIn profile, you can endorse them for skills which they have because they've gone through the same program, things like that. So there's ways to build a two-way value stream and then and build a good relationship fairly quickly. Yeah. But it's insane how much our alumni are willing to help out if you reach out properly.
Absolutely. And I would say, just to build on that point from Dave, don't expect your contact to do the homework for you. Don't expect them to look at your background and to try and figure out what the rationale is here. Make it as easy and transparent for them as possible. Here are my interests. This is my experience. Just try, don't write a novel, but really try and guide them along into your natural connection as intuitively as possible when you send that invitation to connect. All right, looks like we have maybe time for one more question.
Hey, Tom.
Yeah.
I'm willing to share my slide deck of how to reach out and connect with alumni that I teach to the executive MBA students.
Great.
Here.
Okay.
So I can get with Mike Newfer. He's, we work together fairly closely, but I'm willing to share what I've been sharing with our executive MBA students for a few years now.
That's great. You know, they asked to share the deck. Maybe you could send that to me and I could tag it onto the deck that I send out. Then they'll all have it.
Okay.
I have a question. Yeah, so something that I've been working on is building a trust relationship with BYU alumni. So I know maybe how to reach out to them, but then I don't know, I don't want them to think that I'm just reaching out to them because I need their help to get an internship. I really want to build a good relationship. So what are some ways that I can maybe build that relationship from cool to warm and then eventually to an advocate?
Well, I guess one thing, it's actually fine, even though, I mean, the reality is you are reaching out to them because you would like to have their help. But as they hopefully respond and you begin to have that conversation, then you could have the mindset of where this is not just transactional, help me get a job here, but more of building a good working relationship. In essence, follow up with an article about their industry or trends or something that you think might be interesting to them, just to share with them. So your mindset going in could be one of, let me actually work to build a longer term professional relationship with this person, not just transactional, help me get my foot in the door. And if you have that mindset going in, it helps make you feel more comfortable because you know in your heart, you'll actually be able to hopefully add some value to them as well.
Yeah, I think those are great thoughts. Okay, I think we're at the end of our time. I'm sure, so Todd and Scott, could I just say, fair to say, we are all here for them. If they want to reach out to us, please send us a note. We're happy to have individual conversations, exchange notes, whatever. I mean, we will do everything we can for you, as will the rest of the board. I think there's, almost 20 of us on the marketing advisory board, and we are here for you. You are not in this alone. That is an important thing, I think, for us all to remember. Okay? Hey, thank you, particularly.
I'd like to thank everybody, Tom, Todd, Scott. We really appreciate the time you spent. This has been invaluable, and I'm sure will help even more students as we make the recording available. Can we all of you here that are on, can you take your phone off of mute or your microphone, and let's give them a big hand. Let's show our appreciation to them. Thank you, Tom, Todd, Scott, appreciate it.
All right, this is the Zoom golf clap. I love it. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, bye.
All right, take care.